Hi, and welcome to Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever. I'm Rabbi David Katz. This is Parashas Eikev. The title of the article, Torat Moshe in Motion, Understanding the Mitzvah, i.e. the Chok. The kind of a double entendre here. The Parasha uses the word the Mitzvah, as in the command upon the people, what's called the philosophical view. In the mitzvah, the Chok means the law, whether micro or macro, that which is not easily understood beyond logic, yet it does ultimately have an understanding. Questions, comments, or feedback, I can be reached at Rabbi Katz at virtualyeshiva.com. And as we always start with the theme of the Haftorah that will have been generated from the article, then over to the Zohar to find a consistent flavor, let's call it, and then onwards into the article. The Haftorah was what the commentaries state is the second of 7 weeks of comforting. When you look at the language of comfort and the amount of weeks, you get a strong hint of Bnei Noah. 7 weeks, 7 laws, comfort, Noah. So it's my opinion, it could be this is just my opinion, that the 7 weeks of these Haftorahs of comforting after Tisha B'Av, I'm thinking that it's very strong energy for the Gerim. Again, it's just an opinion, a belief. I've seen it so far, and I guess we'll only know at the end of 7 weeks. Since last week we had that intention, I guess when the 7 weeks are done, we'll know if there was, any kind of bracha given to an adherent of the 7 laws of Noah. One thing to point out, and this was shocking to me. I didn't get this until I started preparing the class. I don't know if any of you thought to check this. It's kind of a sneaky one. Did anybody think to check what the name Ekev means? I was preparing, and I had no idea what Ekev even meant. I mean, I'm sure I've learned it before, and I realized, what does that mean? So I looked it up, and as I looked it up, it's like Hashem concealed it just to prove that it was the right target at the end. It means that the least most important mitzvah you should treat as every other mitzvah. So the Jewish people are going to be commanded in the mitzvah, the mission, the philosophical view. You're going into the land. You have all these things to do. And in the middle of it, there really are not that many mitzvahs that we have to do that are in the format of Ekev. We have a 1. So you have the reading of the Shema. Would you really call that a week mitzvah? Then you have the crown jewel, as always, right on target. Love the Ger. I mean, there it is in all her glory. The Jewish people, unfortunately, are going to look at this and say, mitzvah's kala. It's not one of the most serious mitzvahs as per the Jewish people. But that's the point of Ekev. Ekev is saying, don't have that thinking in mind. So that the name has the connotation, that which is a light mitzvah in your eyes, you need to treat it like a serious mitzvah. And yet it's not even a nice, cute idea. It happens to be fact. So when you look into the Parsha with Ekev, the Ger, in mind, you end up getting a fantastic recipe. The basis of the essence of Moses' philosophy, that which causes exile and redemption, the meaning of the Shema, love your God, fear your God. When you have the proper lens to look at the Parsha, it's fantastic. And the Zohar complies. the most sublime teachings I've ever seen in my life. But if you miss that Ekev sensation, it's just kind of blah. I'll give you an example. I'm sure people have heard of Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avos. So when you read Pirkei Avos in let's say, a very Jewish mentality, okay, we're in yeshiva, not interested in the outside world, non-Jews are not my thing. I come to work every day, I learn, for whatever reason I learn, I have a rabbi, and I go home, and that's it. Close the books until tomorrow, and we'll see what tomorrow brings. Very workmanlike attitude. Right? I am Jewish, period. Nothing else going on in the world. It's a very common perception. So this guy learns Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, and it's not that hard to achieve. You must have respect for your rabbi. Well, certainly I do. Who do you think teaches me Talmud tomorrow? You have to get along. Well, sure my yeshiva gets along. What else would we do? Don't take a bribe. Would we bribe in the yeshiva? And you go through every law, and it's like it's built to be easy. You know, the system is created around this construct. That it's very conducive, the external realm of Pirkei Avos, to what is daily Jewish life. So again, when you read Parashas Eikev, also very much the same thing. Love the ger. I love my convert friend. You need to say the Shema. Of course I say the Shema. And you go through it, and everything is just kind of simple and obvious. But when you bring in the ger, the world, the big view of the ultimate reality, Pirkei Avos takes on a different meaning. You know, to learn from every person, you mean not a Jew? Well, yeah, there are gerim out there. And all the statutes of Pirkei Avos, when applied to life, real life, not a construct or domain, it becomes an absolute challenge to uphold the Torah of Moshe in every aspect of life. The serious mitzvahs are very simple to perceive in a shrunken universe. When we take on the full scope of commandments, universal, it's a different story. So into the Haftorah. The Haftorah is very kind of conceptual, more than in the text. You know, let's say you're going to a doctor and you have a lot of treatment. Let's say it's a long treatment, a needle in the skin or whatever painful thing, or even giving birth maybe, right? I guess giving birth might be a good analogy. You know that you're going to have the baby. That's a fact. Maybe you'll die during birth, but that's always an option in life. So you have to say in your heart, according to the truth, it'll be over soon, and it'll be okay. Right? There's really no other reality other than that. Yet when you're going through one of those moments of pain, I mean, I know that kidney stones is one, I've had that. Even little things, they're just horrible. Bad experiences, like you're a guest at a bad table and you just want it over. You feel like it's never going to happen. You're never going to get out of there. And you even convince yourself that it'll never end. And people will make it worse. You know, put salt in the wound. And the faith you have to have is it will be over soon and it will be okay. And that's the idea of Israel, and I would even say the Gerim going out into exile at the destruction of the temple. The idea is you're going to be told that Sinai covenant is over. The new covenant has risen. The Jews have been written off. And the Parsha tells you you're going to go out to exile. And you have to have the attitude, you're going through something really rough. and it will be over soon, and you will be okay. So the Haftorah speaks on the lowest common denominator. Because the Torah says, I'll never forget your covenant with you. And then, another book will say, I have destroyed my covenant with you, Israel. And the Sitra Achra, other religions will come and say, you see, God broke the covenant. Israel's lost. We're the new Israel. So there's a lot of contradictions. The contradictions are part of Torah. So you have to have a lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator is that which is often spoken in the negative. The inference from feeling that doesn't get articulated in speech. When I discipline my son, I tell him, don't hit your sister. I don't have the ability to be God and speak two as one. I can't say, don't hit your sister and I love you, please go to your room. So if I say, don't hit your sister, he cries, and I have to achieve the ultimate goal. Please, it's tired, it's 9 o'clock at night, it's past your bedtime, please continue to go into bed. Now let's say, at that time, he goes in, I don't get out the words, I love you, blah, 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 the whole story. The idea is that it's there in the negative. Not everything, because we don't have the ability to speak positive and negative at the same time. Otherwise, life would be infinite just by speech. The Torah would not be able to be contained within two covers. This is the idea of contradiction, machlekes, argument. And an argument contains infinite matters, but if you speak out every little thing without the argument of different points of view, it becomes impossible to contain the wisdom and knowledge. So God says, I'm going to cut off the covenant. But then the Parsha and the Haftorah says, let's get to the bottom line here. The covenant's not going anywhere. And you're going to be told either in your heart or by others, it's over, forget about it, throw in the towel, lost cause. You have to know it's the lowest common denominator. It will be over soon, and it will be okay. The Parsha deals with this in terms of exile and redemption. The nature of what really the catalyst is going to be is Ekev. The manipulation, the seizure of, the lack of interest of that which is Ekev, namely to love the ger. Could even be saying the Shema with the wrong intention. As the Zohar goes on to explain what are the essence, what are the essences of the intentions that go into saying the Shema, particularly when you lay down to retire for the night. So you can have a very severe commandment, Shema, planting the land of Israel, all the things that are severe, but you take the little things lightly. The Parsha goes into the land of Israel. And what is about the land of Israel? So if you take lightly the aspects that go into the land of Israel, that also causes you to be exiled from your land. The big things people do, but when brought to light on a universal worldly scale, they become harder. Like that ethics of the fathers. It's easy to achieve it in your own backyard. But when you bring it to the world, it gets a little harder. So governing the land of Israel is very easy to do. But when you have the temple in Jerusalem as a house of prayer for all, you're expected to do things that are light in your eyes. So if you're going to forget the ger, how do you have the temple in Jerusalem? How do you have a land of Israel? And the Zohar is going to go into spiritual dimensions if you take light the Shema in conjunction of going to bed and waking up washing your hands. if you don't take the full implication, how can you expect to not be punished for the lack of saying the Shema? The parsha goes into the Shema. And we would think it's severe. It's not. It is severe, but there are parts to it that are weak in your eyes. For example, how does the ger focus or come into my Shema? And we think very small in today's generation. The Zohar, because of the parsha that's about thinking small, at least it opened my eyes to what the essence of thinking big really is. If you want to summarize the parsha, it's that. Parashas Eikev, if you stay in your backyard, it's a very cute, quaint little parsha. There's a little problem of exile, another problem, we'll come back. You say the Shema, you're in the land of Israel, we're getting close to Rosh Hashanah. Just get through these parshas and move on. We already know this. I already know about Israel, I already know about this. I'm Jewish, I know. And that's what these 7 weeks to me are coming to accentuate. We know you know. We know you read the same things every Tisha B'Av. And you're comforted after every Tisha B'Av. And the Sefer Devarim is nothing new. That's why it's called Mishnah Torah, the review of the Torah. You're right, there is nothing new here. That's why you have to really look for those little mitzvahs you weren't aware of. Love the ger, maybe not as you thought of it as a convert. To the point that the nitty-gritty is identifying the positives and the negatives. I mean, like an electrical charge. Without that, you can't even understand what's going on with Parashas Eikev. But when you identify the positives and charges in the verses, you see that the parsha comes together and it's a beautiful tapestry. That the intentions of Shema are in one parsha, the Shema is in the other, and it's a dynamic function. It's a construction, like building the Mishkan. The Zohar then assumes that you did all this work, and it starts off by talking about blessing. Blessing brings energy to the world. Then it goes on about Shabbat. And then it talks about, when the negative, by not speaking literally about Abraham and Shem, the entire Abraham-Shem thing comes down. But never by name. It's only in the negative. Then you get all these things about Shabbat, names of God, alien fire, which is another negative to Nadav and Avihu. The entire Zohar is in the negative. Nothing is really said. But if you want to narrow it down to one thing, I guess you could call it, in a weird way, the Zohar Haftorah and Parsha about bread. However, how random that seems. Why would I want to focus on bread? And then you come out of Shabbos and you go to the Chavirim Around the World blog, and there's Joe. It's all about bread. And then it hits me. Everything I learned. I'm writing all this down after Shabbos. So I'm going back in and saying, okay, I learned this, I learned that, I learned this. And why did you focus on bread? Why did you focus on don't leave out the small things? Why did you focus on it'll be over soon? Are these not negative descriptions of love the ger? And again, you know what I mean by negative. Let's make that uniform. Negative, electrically charged negative, as opposed to an emotional state. If it's an emotional state, I'll express it explicitly. The entire construct is in the negative of the ger. Loving the ger is a mitzvah that it's not easy to go through that mitzvah. And you do want it to be over soon, and it will be okay when it's over. Because when you love the ger, that means you love the truth. And if you love the truth, you're going to be asked to go in to a very tight spot and to bring back that truth and restore it. That's what the nature of going to bed at night with the Shema is. All day long, we extract truth, we bring it up to the spiritual realm in sleep. There we attend a meal. Impurity gathers on the fingers, just like on the meals of Shabbat. Impurity gets on the fingers. That's why you wash after the meal. You wake up. Where do we wash in our reality? The washing of the hands in the morning, and you've woken up, a type of resurrection of the dead. You say Modeh Ani, and you are pure. So you're pure that when you go back to bed, you've done your washing in the morning, and you ascend through sleep. You said your Shema, and this is the total universal cooperation of the Jew and the Ger. That's how big one must think in terms of understanding the Shema. If you're not playing with the Ger on the forefront of your mind, how do you get these things? So the Zohar outlines it all, and only by realizing that's what he's talking about, because the focus each time was the bread. And the Parsha states very explicitly, love the Ger, give him bread and garment. Rashi explains, bread and garment are very serious. That's all Jacob asked for. When you get into the Talmud of Brachas, the 5th chapter talks about the Chasidim Rishonim, the original Chasidim. Which if you learn Tehillim 84, it turns out that's a term for the Gerim of old. That went from, whether it be the Holy Temple, and their saturation there, the houses of study and prayer, as they were there to pray most of the day, guard their learning, a little bit of work with bread and water, by their own volition, because that was the vessel that came down their blessing. On the bread. The bread is the focus of the entire Parsha. Loving the Ger represents understanding these things. And it's not easy. Because to find the thread through all these intricate devices, that small backyard of Judaism says, we have our backyard contained. We know what's important. This Parsha says, you know what's important? Things that are seemingly not important are also very important. People ask, why do you make such a fuss of the Ger? As in not a convert. And the answer is because it needs to be done. Because it's important. All through time, it's not seen as something important. There's something called the Benoni, average. A Benoni can be righteous, he can be wicked. The Talmud says Mashiach will come in a generation that is entirely wicked or entirely righteous. And is it a contradiction? Again, matters of contradiction. It's not a contradiction. The only person that can contain the level of Benoni on these levels, Benoni meaning median, is the Benoni who, by definition, is not that motivated. I'm motivated until my people is concerned. Beyond that, I can't be bothered. The Benoni never seeks to look for the interest of the Ger. That's why the Ger is in Parashas Eikev. That's why it's a light mitzvah that must be treated like a severe one. Because it's only light from that view of the backyard. If you step out of your backyard, you find out this is a tremendously huge mitzvah. And when you step out of your backyard, you'll be made to feel, let's just get this over soon and be okay. Because when you leave the backyard, that means God is taking care of you and nobody else. One might even call that the definition of a ger. That's when the Jew really steps into his ger shoes. The mitzvah of love the ger by the Ramban explains it exactly. Loving the ger should be love the convert. Because you were gerim in the land of Egypt. 99.9 repeating or higher will say that's the convert. Only the Ramban commentary understands that this is generally a negative principle. The ger non-Jew who remains negative, i.e. non-revealed. Why would God be revealing him now? But yet he is. So the Ramban's commentary shifts into the revealed positive to a negative. He said that when the Jews were in Egypt as gerim, that was a temporary ger status. Right? They're going to come out, they're going to go to Sinai, enter the land of Israel. Technically speaking, on the applied sense, they're no longer gerim. They're gerim of a kingdom of priests on the land to God. To the rest of the world, they're called the children of Israel, future to be called the Jews. And you have a mitzvah to love the ger. Don't taunt the ger. You were a ger in the land of Egypt. Ramban says, so since this was a temporary ger for you, the Jew, you have to say that there are different types of gerim. There are gerim that are permanent. There are gerim that are temporary. A temporary ger would be somebody that converts to Judaism, basically. Right? You realize that you're a ger, then you go through your path, you end up becoming Jewish, you are no longer a ger, you are now a Jew, and you hear the proverbial message of God, don't taunt the ger, love the ger, because you were a ger when you were in Egypt. So if there's ever a precedent we call converts gerim, it's a negative and a positive. You'd speak to him in the negative, which is kind of like taunting him, but it's not the taunt, it's the positive, meaning don't go back to Egypt. That's what God does to the Jew. Now that you're a Jew, the Jew acts as, let's say, the mouth of God. Just as God says to the Jew, don't go back to Egypt, you're a ger. You're a ger. You say to the ger, don't go back to Egypt, which is the entire fear of conversion, as explained by the Rambam. You see how it's not nice. So it's a positive statement, again, not connotation, positive, charged. And the negative message is actually a conducive message, meaning don't go back to Egypt. So for that reason, there are temporary gerim, and then there are permanent gerim. Those who do not convert. And for them as well, there's a mitzvah, don't taunt, and you have a mitzvah to love. The temporary ger, he also has the mercy of God upon him. The permanent ger has the mercy upon him of God. In the time of Egypt, God is going to redeem the future Jewish people. One, because they're gerim and he has mercy on them. Two, they have specific merit of the forefathers. Let's call that the DNA to the temporary ger, which is the idea that the gerim that convert, this is why they say, well, you were always Jewish, meaning you always had something resembling the merit of the forefathers. That's the party line. Somebody that doesn't convert, God still has mercy on him, but the prerequisite Jewish merit is not there. The merit comes from somewhere else. That's what the Ramban's commentary explains very clearly. So when it says you are gerim in Egypt, It's not to say to remind you, you know where you were. Which is a completely separate remembrance from God to them. It's letting you know that when you were redeemed, it was for one reason. And when these Gerim come out of their personal Egypt, it's for another reason. And it goes into conjunction with don't taunt the Ger. It's not a competition. God redeemed me because, well, I have more merit than you. That comes into the line of taunting the Ger. So not only should you not taunt, but you also have to love. And this little nuance in learning is so small. That's why it's in Parashas Eikev. But if you're not even aware of the Ger, you don't even know he exists, how would you come to learn this Ramban? How many people really claim to know that Ramban? That they love the Ger here is really coming to say that it's the non-Jewish Ger and the convert Ger, either in the negative and the positive. And the implications of it are huge, because if you don't get the non-Jewish Ger here, when the Torah Parsha is broken down into its microdynamics, saying the Shema correctly, exile and redemption, the land of Israel, the absolute godless or tremendous insights of the Zohar about the bread and the garment, to the point that the Zohar goes on to explain that this is the crux of the essence of Moses in his essential namery called Bishagam, Genesis 6:3. All of the absolute biggest secrets of the Torah are in this Parsha in the Zohar. We'll see what happens the next couple of weeks, but so far, this is off the charts. The secrets of the Gerim and Shabbat, Gerim learning Torah, the Gerim and their association with the red heifer, the two shins of the tefillin that have 7 branches, a remembrance of the 7 laws of Noah. All these things are little things that don't matter. 2 shins of the tefillin, so what? The non-Jew that keeps Shabbos, so what? Nadav and Avihu, 2 random guys that brought alien fire, so what? Even those same incarnations of Moses, so what? The meaning of Baruch, blessed, so what? The base of Bereshit, so what? Love the Ger, so what? Abraham and Shem Melchizedek at the Temple Mount and all the Torah that comes with that, so what? The Shema, with the right intentions, where you go and where you came from when you woke up, why you wash for today and for yesterday, so what? The defeat of the Erev Rav happened already by Moses, so what? Erev Rav. These are all the so whats that exist in Torah. Every one of these so whats only become chamor, meaning serious, is when you leave your backyard. And when you leave your backyard, that's when the Haftorah kicks in. You hope it'll be over soon and let it be okay. Because that leaving of the proverbial backyard is going from holiness to purity. The essence of Shabbos within 6 days of the week. Bringing the upper worlds into fruition, not just on Shabbos, but also in the weekdays, when war will stop. That's the world to come. On Shabbos, war stops. It's like you hold down the fort and you keep out the enemy. That's the task during the week. That's when you have love the Ger, that's where you have to go. When that happens, then you bring down that universal Shabbat. Then you'll have the peace in the world to pray and to learn Torah. To have Gerim included in everything. Pirkei Avos will have messages that reach beyond your backyard. The big mitzvahs will obviously be done, but all those little things that would have been ignored will become paramount. They really contain the essence of the Torah. From at least the perspective of this week's Parsha, that's what Torat Moshe, in synchronicity with the Torah of Shem, is coming to say. Torah of Shem is how you approach it. Torah of Moshe is conquering it. The Torah of God is understanding it, internalizing it, and expressing it. The entire Torah of Moshe, as we know it, contains all the elements of these little things. The Jewish people have a history of being the Beinoni. Is he righteous? Is he wicked? They might be righteous to the point of the fence of the backyard, but once you're asked to cross the fence, the answer is always no. Too dangerous out there. So you become the Beinoni that brings down the holy spark, and it remains. The Ramban knew about Love the Ger. This was his opportunity to shine on this with Rashi. Rashi says, a blemish in you, do not make it known in your friend. Me, the Jew, I'm a ger. You, the ger, are obviously a ger. I feel I'm better because I have a merit in the positive sense. I'm going to take it out on you. What you don't realize when you do that is he has merit, it's just in the negative. That's called his relationship with God. Everybody has a level of ger relationship here. There is no competition. Because each negative aspect is that person's relationship with God. Every merit is different. The Jewish people have a shared merit. And for that merit, they were brought out of Egypt. The ger has a different story, different relationship. God speaks to him directly, differently. The Sinai moment that Moses goes on about in the Parsha was a time for Israel to see what it is when God is being. That's one type of relationship with God. What is it to experience God being God? The Jewish people have that on their head whether they like it or not. The Gerim, on the other hand, have the gift of God speaking to them, at least in the negative, if not the positive. Every time we find the ger in the Torah, there's a personal message from God to the ger. That's his merit. His merit is God. God says 46 times, I love the ger, and so should you. Yes, I'll have mercy on him to bring him out of Egypt. So when you're taunting the ger, it means you don't know the love, you don't hear the negative. You're hard-headed, not soft. Parashas Eikev goes on and on and on. What it is to take things that are generally seen lightly and make them serious. And that's just like King David says, I am a ger. It's not a joke, and it's not cute, and it's not funny. All those little things, well, the tefillin is cute with the shins, and paradum is a cute little mitzvah to get pure. The wrong attitude is taken. What does Moses say? You have to love Hashem, your God. But that comes after you fear Hashem, your God. The ger is a cute little funny mitzvah. Until you understand what the implications are, then you'll start to find the fear of God. Especially when you're asked to leave your backyard to go out there and bring them in. And they're everywhere. The Talmud talks about the Hasidim Rishonim, a bunch of Jews hanging around the shul, davening 9 hours a day. That's what you're told. Go back and trace the roots through the Talmud, through the explanation of the Agarata, into Tehillim, the Psalms of David, number 84. This is based on the Gerim, Oved the Edomite, who was entrusted to be a player in the Beis HaMikdash. And while you're out there exploring it, you're saying, this is not fun terrain. That's what the Haftorah is saying. Why do you go out to exile to Makabel Gerim? Receiving the Gerim is one reason why the Jews go to exile. On the Tamar Yonah interview, that's what one of the answers I gave, because that was the question that was posed. Why do the Jews go out to exile? The Maharal of Prague explains to receive Gerim and to repair the love problem. So again, taken as a cute, funny little mitzvah. Oh, we have to go out amongst the nations, and when a convert comes on our door, we be mean, and eventually we take him in, and that's how I do the will of God. Well, how about the real way? How about to go out there where there are no Jewish strongholds and find the ger who is not a convert? That's not seen as a big thing in people's eyes. And that is the biggest of all. Because without him, when the Rambam speaks of the Hasidim, or the Chasidei Omos HaOlam, the Chasidei HaUmot HaOlam, the Hasidim of the nations, of the world, every day and every night, God fills them more and more with essential, small in your eyes portions of Torah. And only when you go to them and you talk to them, you find out these people, the Rambam calls Chasidei Omos HaOlam, they're actually Chasidim. Now you'll say, well, it's translated as pious or devout. But it's not. It's the type of Chasid or Chasidut is the warmth of Torah, glowing coals, the essence of the Torah. And it's within them. Who else is out there talking about the red heifer? And why do Noahide organizations focus on the red heifer? We can talk about the land of Israel, planting the land of Israel. What is really to be planted here? What is not? 7 grains versus argan oil, for example. Which one is really here? Which one isn't? So the Gerim have within them all these little light-in-your-eye mitzvahs. When you put them all together and you extract, speaking of oil, the real oil in them, that's where you get the essence of Torah. Paraduma, the shins on the tefillin itself, praying, learning Torah. What does Eikev mean? Loving the ger, Shem and Abraham, saying the Shema. And everyone will just say, Jewish mitzvahs, go home, folks, nothing to see here. So not only do you lock the door, but then you take it lightly in your camp. Double no-no. Whereas if you would take them seriously, you would realize they're universal and locking the door is not acceptable. Then you get into the big confrontation. What does the ger do with these things? And everyone will say, don't taunt the ger, but does that apply to the non-Jew? When you get into the Ramban commentary, you see very clearly it does include the non-Jew. And taunting is very bad. And when you take Rashi's advice not to put the mum in you and others, you get a Hasidic idea, a warmth of Torah message. That this person has the merit, but the ger has a different merit. That's already out of the scope and realm of the Ramban. That's already an essential Torah concept. That's a rectification of character traits. Borderline Kabbalistic. That's the definition of Hasidus. There's the pshat, remez, drush, and so, the simple, the hint, the extrapolation, and the secret. And you wrap it all up together to get what is the really deep, essential message of the Torah. And the tradition will tell you is chasidut, the real warmth. Let's say it's the negative, from the feeling from God. That it's so negative, you just feel it. And to put words to it, first of all, how could you do it? It would cheapen the moment. So the Ramban's commentary offers a real negative charge from his positive explanation to a negative of loving the ger extends also to the non-Jew. That's his positive to a negative. Then there's a negative from him that says, man, this is really off the charts. So you give him bread, then you get the Hasidus going wild, to the point that the Zohar brings in every major topic that exists in the universe. That really is the recurring theme in all of these things. You see how it's just fractal at this point. There's making light of the mitzvahs. Then, to salvage them, you have to go out to, say, to exile, where you dread it. It'll be over soon, but you'll be okay. You come back on your land, built up from receiving the gerim abroad. You're in comfortable territory. God is with you. His eyes are on the land. And all the Torat Moshe in Eretz Yisrael exists. The Torah of Moses exists in the land of Israel. The tefillin with the two shins of the 7 vavs representing the 7 nations at all times. There. Blessing after you eat food on the land, the holy food, which brings the shefa down, the energy down into the world. Again, a little thing, made light in the eyes of many, but it has world implications. And you read the words of the blessings of grace after meals. The Jew has a responsibility. And the responsibility is not taken. And just like any ger, whether it's a Jewish ger, a non-Jewish ger, learning the Torah on these little things brings one to responsibility. The world needs that to come down the right way, lishma. Without the proper learning, without taking up these little things and really understanding and probing these mitzvahs, how does it ever come down lishma for its own sake? Moses brings out the Erev Rav evil sect from Egypt, and within them are the Gerim. We know the Erev Rav got the Jews to sin. The Zohar says a fantastic thing. We all know Moses delayed in coming down the mountain. So the Erev Rav take over, golden calf, problematic. It suggests that Moses was purposefully late in coming down. It was by being late it called out the Erev Rav. Their nature was seen. They were exterminated on the spot. And now, like a python that when you chop off its head, it lingers for a long time. That's how nasty the Erev Rav are, as on an animalistic level. And how does one understand what Erev Rav is, says the Zohar? Moses wins. He does it from mercy by letting them live out their defined timeline. And not infinite. They have their time, which is the essence of Moses' name read. 120 years, that's it. So to speak, Erev Rav have their timeline, and that's it. The Erev Rav are defined by those who ascend levels of conversion, gior, becoming ger, lo lishma, not for its own sake. When somebody wants to go up a level, not for its pure intended sake, that is the evil sect of the Erev Rav. Thus, by teaching the ger what the ger means, because a ger is a proper conversion, whether it's a ger gamor, to where he's a Jew, ger toshav, ger tzedek, whatever ger path one is on. And again, based on merit, not merit, the mercy of God, God's doing it to me, I don't, whatever it is, as long as it's for its own sake, that's what makes it kosher. That which is not for its own sake renders it Erev Rav and a sect of evil. Learning the proper Torah makes one responsible and properly committed. By going after the light mitzvahs, i.e. loving the ger lishma, teaching it lishma for its own sake, that's how you create for its own sake. And it exposes the pathways that are not for its own sake. That's what the underlying message is in the Parsha. Another underlying message that comes from the actions of Moses himself. When he was delayed, they said, let us go after other gods. The gods are the same gematria Moses. They went up a level in their own eyes, not for its own sake, and bam, called out. The ger in the negative is a lishma thing. He is for his own sake by definition. Then you get those mitzvahs like tefillin, praying, shema, paraduma, for its own sake. Then you get a religion of Judaism for the Jews for its own sake. Then you get a Torah revealed, Torah Moshe, for the Jews and for the Gerim for its own sake. The ger becomes for its own sake. Levels of religiosity are called Baal Tshuva for the Jew becomes for its own sake. The Erev Rav are snuffed out. All by the seat of mercy. But going for its own sake means you learn those little things. That until it's revealed, it remains a potential ger in concept. And the nature of a ger is that it stands alone and the eyes of God are upon it. God will bring it in. No, it'll be over soon and okay. In times of absolute disbelief, whether being impressed upon you or brought out from within you, then God comes to the rescue. That's what the Haftorah's message to the Parsha is. God will bring you in. God will send you out. God will bring you in. Those light little mitzvahs, God will send you out. God will bring you in. There will be a time of loving the ger. But not until all the gems are written down through 2,000 years of history. This was the Ramban's piece of history where he shines by Hashem's enlightening the ger. The Ramban's words are enlightened in conjunction with Rashi. What's generally called a chok, a not easily understood or illogical mitzvah in the Torah, it is a chok as long as it's in the context of one's backyard. Once you go out to find where that chok comes from, just like the red heifer, they had to go out and find. I believe they got it from a non-Jew, if I'm not mistaken. In the time of Moses. When you go out to the land of the ger, you'll come back with those sparks. Or dangerous to bring in, but that's what brings understanding to the essence of the Torah. That essence of the Torah is called Mashiach. Essentially, when you put it all together, that's chamor, that's serious. Yet it's found amongst the gerim. That which is kal, easy in your eyes. And the revelation that comes about is that you really shouldn't distinguish between the two. They each have their merit. They each have their relationship with God. In the Mishnah Torah, we required a Mishnah Torah. The review of the Torah, the Ramban takes us in Eikev only to bring us back to Mishpatim, Parashas Mishpatim, that tells you the seventh Noahide law, erecting a Beis Din. The Jews are 100% involved in that. for it to work along with the Gerim. The two unite in that seventh law, predicated on learning Torah. And there you have the infinite vortex of positive and negative, all through the Torah, Jew and Ger, to the point of the fractal infinite. Hashem tells the Jewish people, don't go back to Egypt. He's saying, don't be an apostate. That's why it's not considered taunting the Jew, the Ger. The Ger also is spoken to himself by Hashem in the same vein, in the negative. When it says, don't be an apostate, it's a message to the Ger, don't go back to Egypt. What looks like a taunt from God is actually the love of God in the negative. It's a very delicate dance for when a Jew calls a convert a ger. The lishma take on that would be to not go back to Egypt. But he must be sure he's loving the ger. And it's very dangerous ground. You're very close to taunting that ger. Why not call him a Jew? So for the sake of lo lishma, you get very sacred and delicate ground. And those light mitzvahs, what do you call the convert? A ger or a Jew? You need to find out. And you'll only know if you go out and makabel gerim amongst the nations for conversion and for non-conversion. Then the essential Torah can be heard. Brought back to Israel until the V'kol Torah Nishma B'Artzenu, the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. That is Moses. Loving the ger is much like saying Modeh Ani in the morning. The halakhic authorities say, why do we say Modeh Ani? It's just good. The real reason is in the negative. It's so great it can't be expounded on in the positive. It's just good to do it. Do it. Love the ger. It's good for you. Loving the ger really is the highest chedva. The Zohar goes on and brings the entire bread, blessing, Shabbos, Shem and Abraham, Torah, every essential foundation of Torah Moshe, which is generally thought to be, should be big. It's actually small in your eyes. Your job, everybody in the world, take those small things and blow them up to beyond big. And that's where the greatest chedva comes from. Without the most absolute off-the-page jumping chedva, no game. It is the prerequisite needed for the revelation of Moshe, which took place in the Zohar, in this parsha. The nature of what it means that Moses reincarnates and rolls over in every generation and was only revealed once at the time of the Exodus. After that, it's Moses, which is called Nishmat Moshe. How tragic it is when the greatest element of the Torah, Moses, is seen as the lightest and not even taken up what that means. To understand what Moses and his Torah represent, the chedva without end must be met. And only Parashas Eikev, where the light must be elevated, light as in kal, easy, has to be elevated into the severe. Only this parsha can achieve the essence of the Torah by nature of the topic. And from the essence of the Torah, it all comes about. And really, what is the essence of that light-hearted mitzvah that all this talk comes about? In Parashas Eikev, it simply reminds you to love the ger. And then it even throws a positive spark, give him some bread and garment, which sounds lighter than light. And the Zohar has the ability to show you, if you can just think big and really do that mitzvah lishma, the secrets from Moses himself come down in a 24-hour time span, 7 days a week, 6,000 years, and will culminate with the coming of Mashiach. Thank you very much. Have a great week. See everyone on Wednesday. Questions, comments, or feedback, I can be reached at rabbikatz@virtualyeshiva.com.